You ever have that one moment where someone says something so out of line, so loaded with resentment, that you just sit there in stunned silence, thinking, did they really just say that to me? Yeah, that was me 3 weeks ago, staring across the kitchen table at my older brother as he smirked like he hadn't just insulted me in the most backhanded way possible. I'm Nathan, by the way, 33, single, software engineer, and apparently the villain of my family's latest drama, because I didn't bankrupt myself cleaning up someone else's mess. But we'll get there. Let me back up a little. I'm the youngest of three. My sister, Kara, is 37, a nurse with 2 kids and a tendency to always be broke. My brother, Jake, is 39, the golden boy growing up, the athlete, the charmer, the one mom and dad would move mountains for if he even hinted at needing something. I was the quiet one, the nerd, as Jake liked to say. The one who liked books more than football and had a knack for solving problems, unless that problem involved navigating my family's emotional minefields. Our parents passed away 2 years ago, 6 months apart. Dad had a heart attack, and Mom, well, she just sort of gave up after that. I was the one who handled everything: funeral arrangements, estate paperwork, the will. And when it came time to divide things, it was messy, as you can probably imagine. There was a house, some savings, and an investment portfolio that Dad had built up quietly over the years. Nothing mind-blowing, but solid. Jake wanted the house. Kara wanted a payout to help with her mortgage. I was fine with either, as long as we split things fairly. But it didn't play out like that. Jake insisted on taking the house and offered to buy us out, with money he hadn't even secured yet. Kara took her third in cash. I walked away with my share in assets, not cash, Dad's portfolio, which I managed carefully and even grew. Fast forward to last month. Jake, who never made good on that buyout, had refinanced the house twice, racked up a ton of debt, and then, in a move so dumb it almost felt like performance art, blew the last of his inheritance. Money he borrowed against the house, on a brand new car. A stupidly expensive one, too. I'm talking bright red, V8 engine, midlife crisis kind of car. When I heard about it, I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. It was such a Jake move. So you can imagine my shock when he showed up uninvited at my place last weekend, looking like someone who had just realized Vegas doesn't always let you win. Kara was with him too, kids in tow, like they were staging some kind of family intervention in my living room. I should have known something was up the second they both brought Starbucks. Must be nice being rich while we're drowning in bills, Jake said, slouching into my couch like he owned the place. That's what started it. I blinked. What? You heard me, he said, grinning like it was a joke, except there wasn't an ounce of humor in his voice. While we're out here struggling, you're sitting on a gold mine Dad left you. It's not a gold mine, I replied, keeping my voice even. It's a retirement plan. And you had your third. Yeah, he scoffed, and I used it. Things are hard right now. Interest rates, gas, food, everything's through the roof. We could use some help. I repeated, glancing at Kara. She looked down at her coffee cup. Jake leaned forward, elbows on knees. Look, I know we've had our differences, but we're family. You're in a position to help. You've always been the smart one, the saver. You don't even have kids. What are you hoarding it all for? I stared at him, genuinely speechless. The audacity. The total lack of accountability. I'm not hoarding anything, I said finally. I'm just not bailing you out because you made bad choices. That's when he muttered it. Low, like it was under his breath, but loud enough that I'd hear. Must be nice being rich while we're drowning in bills. I didn't even respond. I just stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. Kara looked conflicted, like she wanted to say something, but instead she ushered her kids up and out, mumbling, "Thanks for the coffee," like this was just a casual visit and not an ambush. Jake walked out last, flashing that smug grin again. "You'll come around," he said, like I was the one being unreasonable. 2 hours later, I got a text from Mom's old number. My stomach dropped when I saw it, like some ghost from the past had reached through the phone. But it wasn't her. It was Kara. She'd saved Mom's contact and was using it now to guilt-trip me. "Help him out," the message read. "Or don't bother visiting for the holidays." I stared at it for a long time. It was like a punch to the gut, not just because of the ultimatum, but because they used her number to deliver it. Like weaponizing grief. Like saying, "Mom would have wanted you to do this," even though Mom never once asked me to clean up their messes. I didn't reply. I just blocked the number. And then I blocked Kara. And then Jake. That night, I put my phone on silent and went to bed early, feeling a strange mix of guilt, anger, and, if I'm being honest, a little peace. Like I had finally drawn a line in the sand. I wasn't the bank. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't their punching bag. But when I woke up the next morning, I had 53 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and, this one was the kicker, a Venmo request from my sister. $2,000. Caption: for Jake's car payment. Don't be selfish. That was when I realized they weren't just desperate. They were entitled, and they weren't going to stop. Not unless I made them. You'd think after getting bombarded with 53 missed calls in one night, after being told not to bother coming home for the holidays, after being called selfish for not paying off a car I didn't buy, I'd be angry. But I wasn't. Not at first. That morning, as I stood in my kitchen with a steaming mug of coffee in my hand, phone screen lighting up again and again with new messages, I just felt tired. Not sleepy tired, but bone-deep weary. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even notice until now. I didn't open any of the voicemails. I didn't respond to the Venmo request. I didn't even check who the calls were from. I already knew. And I had nothing to say? Not yet. Instead, I got dressed, went to work like usual, sat through meetings, squinted at code, and answered Slack messages while the notifications kept piling up. By lunch, I had 68 missed calls and 4 more Venmo requests, each one more insulting than the last. One even had a waving emoji and the message, "TikTok, Nathan." TikTok? Like I was on some kind of countdown? Like they were threatening me? That's when the switch flipped. You ever have one of those moments where the fog lifts? Where every memory, every injustice, every bite you held back comes rushing forward like a freight train, and suddenly, finally, you're just done. That was me. Because it wasn't just about the car. It wasn't even about the money. It was about years. Decades, honestly. A lifetime of playing second string to Jake, of being told to be the bigger person, of swallowing every slight to keep the peace. And now they were framing me as the villain because I refused to burn my financial future for someone who never respected me? Nah, not this time. That night, I called Kara. Not because I was ready to reconcile, but because I wanted answers. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting, phone in hand. "Nathan," she said, her voice already edged with exasperation. "Finally. Why are you using Mom's number to text me?" I asked. Calm. Direct. She didn't skip a beat. "Because you never respond to anything else. I figured it would get your attention." Yeah, it got my attention. It also felt manipulative. "Oh please," she snapped. "You're being dramatic. You told me not to come home for Christmas." She scoffed. "Well, maybe if you acted like family." "Like family?" I cut in. "You mean, send Jake money so he can keep driving around in that toy he bought with a second mortgage?" "It's not a toy. He needs that car to get to work." "What work, Kara?" "Last I heard he quit his job at the dealership because they didn't respect him." A long silence. "He's trying, Nathan." "No," I said. "He's failing. Repeatedly. And you're enabling it. Both of you are." She exploded then. "Oh, get off your high horse. Not everyone had it easy like you." I actually laughed. "Easy? You think I had it easy? You think working 60-hour weeks in my 20s to afford night classes and pay rent while Jake lived at home rent-free was easy? Or watching Mom and Dad cover his bills while telling me I was too independent for my own good?" Silence again. I could practically hear her fuming. "You've always been jealous of him," she said quietly. That one stopped me cold. "Jealous?" I repeated. "You hate that Mom and Dad loved him more." There it was. The truth. The thing I'd suspected for years, but no one had ever said out loud. And Kara said it like it was a fact, like I was some petty little brother still chasing approval. "I don't hate it," I said slowly. "I accepted it a long time ago. What I hate is being punished for not being the failure." She didn't respond. "I'm done," I told her. "No more texts. No more calls. I'm not your safety net." And I hung up. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a notification from my bank. Someone had tried to log into my account. 3 failed password attempts before it locked them out. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, trying to process what I was looking at. I'd set up 2-factor authentication, so I knew nothing had been breached. But still, someone had tried. And it wasn't a coincidence. I checked my email next. Sure enough, buried between newsletters and work updates, there it was, a password reset request. Not from me. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started going through my security logs. Whoever it was didn't get far, but the IP address was familiar. Suspiciously familiar. I opened my saved locations and compared. It was Jake's town. I didn't want to believe it. Not really. But when I checked my Venmo history and saw that Kara had sent herself $10 from me a week ago, just to test if I'd notice, apparently, it confirmed everything. They weren't just entitled. They were dangerous. And they had crossed a line. Still, part of me thought maybe this was the low point. Maybe after being shut out, they'd finally back off. Maybe they'd take the hint and move on. But no. A week later, I went to pick up a package from my front porch and saw something stuck to my door. It was a handwritten note, taped right under the peephole. Messy, angry scrawl. You're not better than us. Don't forget where you came from. No signature. But I didn't need one. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about every time I'd let something slide. Every holiday where I let Jake take the biggest slice of ham. Every birthday where Kara gave me a half-hearted gift and expected praise. Every time I offered to help with bills, to fix their laptops, to babysit, to lend a couch, to drive them home, to smile through passive-aggressive digs. And then I remembered something from years ago. Something that suddenly clicked into place like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing. It was right after Dad died. We were all sitting in the lawyer's office, going over the will. At the time, it didn't seem weird. The lawyer had asked if we'd all reviewed the document. Kara and Jake nodded. I said I hadn't seen it yet. He looked surprised. Your brother and sister said they showed you the draft last month. I had frowned, confused. They didn't. Jake jumped in. Oh, we must have forgotten. Sorry, man. At the time, I'd been too distracted by grief to press it. But now I saw it for what it was. They had reviewed the will before I ever saw it. They had access. And they'd known about the clauses. The money. The stocks. The distribution plan. All of it. And now I wondered, what else did they see? Did they know about the secondary trust account Dad set up for emergencies? The one I had to jump through hoops to claim, thinking I was the only one with knowledge of it? Or the letter Dad had written me, handwritten, not typed, saying how proud he was that I had made a life for myself without ever asking for anything? Did they read it? Did they resent it? The next morning, I called my lawyer. Something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was theft, harassment, attempted fraud. And if I didn't do something, it would get worse. I filed a report about the unauthorized Venmo transfer and the login attempts. Then I asked my lawyer to dig deeper into the estate documents, just in case. 2 days later, I got a call. You might want to sit down, he said. Apparently, a few weeks before Dad's death, Jake had tried to convince the estate manager to alter the will. Nothing major, just some minor rewording, supposedly to clarify language. But the lawyer had flagged it as suspicious and rejected the request. The version we all saw was the original, untouched. But Jake had tried. And the kicker? Kara had signed off on it. Not only that, but the lawyer sent me a copy of the draft Jake submitted. In it, the portfolio, my share, was reassigned to a joint family emergency fund, with Jake as primary executor. If that change had gone through, I'd be broke right now. I stared at the draft in disbelief, hands shaking. This wasn't just about entitlement anymore. This was betrayal. And it was calculated. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about what I was going to do next. I felt focused, clear, because now I had evidence. And they had no idea what was coming. Rock bottom doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in slowly, like a cold draft you don't notice at first, until your fingers are numb and you realize the window's been open for days. That was me, about a month after the will incident. The betrayal, the lies. The draft document Jake and Kara tried to slip under the radar like a virus buried in code. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that fire-in-your-chest way. I was just hollow, detached, like I'd stepped out of my own life and was watching from a distance. I'd wake up, drag myself to work, push code around like it was just pixels and syntax, eat something bland for dinner, scroll aimlessly through Netflix, and sleep. If you could call it sleep. Some nights I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan, replaying the last few months in my head like a bad rerun. Other nights, I'd dream about my parents. Vivid, strange dreams where they were still alive, but slightly off. Like they knew something they weren't telling me. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the weight of it. The realization that for years, I'd convinced myself I was part of something. A family. only to find out I was the fallback plan. The wallet. The outsider who got called selfish for not offering up his spine to be walked on. And then there was the silence. The kind that fills the void after you've cut people off. No more birthday texts from Kara. No more obligatory check-ins from Jake. Not even a "Hey, are you alive?" from any cousins, uncles, aunts, most of whom had long ago taken sides in the invisible civil war of our family. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Loyalty in our family was always transactional. If you didn't offer something, money, sympathy, excuses, you weren't worth much. So yeah, that was the fall. Not a crash, but a quiet, lonely slide into numbness. But here's the thing about hitting bottom. You find out what's solid, what doesn't break. And slowly, very slowly, I started to realize something. I was still standing. Not because I was some stoic warrior or had some grand epiphany. Honestly, it started with something small. Stupid, even. A houseplant. My coworker Sarah, who sat 2 desks away, gifted me a snake plant for my birthday. Low maintenance, she said. Like you. I chuckled, took it home, and stuck it on my windowsill. A week later, it was still alive. 2 weeks, still green. A month, thriving. I hadn't kept anything alive in years. But this little plant? It didn't need much. Just a bit of sun, a sip of water, and it grew. Quietly. Persistently. Kind of like me. That was the first shift. Then came the gym. I'd never been a fitness guy. Jake was always the athletic one. But something about the silence in my apartment, the lack of distraction, the emptiness, it made me restless. So one night, around 10 p.m., I grabbed my old sneakers and walked to the 24-hour gym near my place. I didn't go in with some Rocky-style training montage in mind. I just got on the treadmill and walked. 15 minutes. Then 20. Then a light jog. The next night, I did it again. Then again. And soon, it became my new ritual. An hour on the treadmill. A few sets on the weight machines. Nothing extreme. Just motion. Breath. Reclaiming control over my own body. Week by week, I started feeling lighter. Not physically at first, but mentally. The static in my brain started to fade. I began sleeping again. Deep, dreamless sleep that left me clearer in the mornings. I ate better. Less takeout, more cooking. If you haven't tried pan-searing salmon with garlic butter, do it. Life-changing. And then, maybe 2 months into this quiet rebuild, something unexpected happened. My boss pulled me into a private Zoom meeting. "Nathan," she said, smiling in that cautious way managers do when they're about to drop news, "I've been reviewing your work over the past quarter. You've really leveled up lately." I blinked. "Oh, your code's cleaner. Your problem-solving is sharper. Your last security audit caught a bug that saved us weeks of backtracking. We're moving you to lead on the new back-end migration." I didn't know what to say. I hadn't even realized anyone noticed. "Oh, and," she added, "we're bumping your salary. 20% raise." I smiled. Genuinely. "Thanks." But inside, I was stunned. While Jake was defaulting on loans and Kara was sending passive-aggressive Venmo requests, I quietly climbed out of the hole they threw me into and built something stronger. Something mine. And yet, the part of me that had grown up in their shadow, the part that still half expected to be shamed for winning, couldn't quite celebrate. Until the wedding invite arrived. Yes, a wedding. Not Jake's. Not Kara's. One of our second cousins. Someone I barely knew but had seen once a year at awkward Thanksgiving gatherings. The kind of person who'd always say, "Hey man, we should hang out sometime," and then never follow up. The invite came in a thick, cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. Very fancy. Very much, look how successful I am energy. But it wasn't the wedding that caught my attention. It was the RSVP list attached, and the fact that Kara and Jake were both on it. And the handwritten note from the bride at the bottom. "Would love to see you there, Nathan. Everyone's talking about how well you're doing. Would be great to catch up." I stared at that note for a long time. Everyone's talking? Interesting. Because as far as I knew, no one had heard from me in months. Turns out, someone had. My LinkedIn profile. My GitHub projects. Even a Medium post I wrote about software architecture had started gaining traction. I wasn't just rebuilding quietly anymore. I was rising. And they noticed. I RSVP'd yes. Not to flaunt anything, but because I wanted to see, really see, how they'd look me in the eye after everything. I started preparing. Not just my outfit, charcoal gray suit, black tie, sleek dress shoes that made me feel taller than my 5 feet 10 inches frame, but my mindset. I wasn't going to show up bitter. I wasn't going to throw their failures in their face. I was going to walk in like someone who had nothing to prove. And for the first time in years, that was true. A week before the wedding, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Kara. Are you going to the wedding? No, hey. No small talk. Just straight to the point. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another text. Please don't make a scene. It's not the time. Oh. So now she was worried I would make a scene. Interesting. I still didn't respond. Then, the night before the wedding, I got a message on Facebook from Jake. We should talk before tomorrow. Things got out of hand. Let's just be cool. Cool. Cool like the time he tried to rewrite the will. Cool like the time he let Kara threaten me with our dead mother's number. I ignored him too. And that silence? It was power. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. But I could feel the pieces aligning. The momentum shifting. And at the wedding, surrounded by people who once saw me as the quiet brother, the weird one, the nerd, I was going to show them just how wrong they were. Not with arrogance, but with presence, with poise. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's evolution. But of course, Jake and Kara didn't like that one bit. Especially when they realized what was really coming. And they still had no idea how far I was willing to go. The wedding was held at a country estate just outside the city. One of those sprawling places with manicured lawns, ivy-covered arches, and enough fairy lights to make your eyes ache. I arrived fashionably late, alone, walking up the gravel path in my tailored suit and polished shoes, my hands tucked calmly into my coat pockets. A valet took my keys without looking twice. For once, I blended into the world I'd quietly built, not the family I came from. The ceremony had already wrapped. The bride and groom were off taking pictures in a sun-drenched garden, and the guests were milling around the cocktail tables on the terrace, sipping wine and catching up. I could feel the looks before I saw them. Those half-second glances, the murmured recognition. A few people came up with polite smiles, asking what I'd been up to, commenting vaguely about how they'd heard things. I nodded, answered vaguely, and scanned the crowd. Then I saw them. Jake and Kara, standing under a white tent near the champagne table. She wore a navy blue dress, too tight at the sleeves. He was in a suit that didn't quite fit right. Expensive, sure, but clearly borrowed or rented. He had that familiar smug tilt to his chin, the one he always wore when he thought the room owed him something. They hadn't seen me yet. I took a breath, adjusted my cufflinks, and walked toward them. Kara spotted me first. Her smile was brittle. She stepped forward like she might actually hug me, but I stopped short and offered a hand instead. She hesitated, then took it. Nathan, she said carefully, as if testing the word. Nice night, I replied. Jake didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me with this unreadable look, like he couldn't decide whether to play cool or play victim. Then he smirked. You clean up well. I smiled. I always did. You just never noticed. That landed harder than I expected. His smile faltered. Kara glanced between us like she was expecting fireworks, but I wasn't here to explode. Not yet. I've got a table near the back, I said. You two sitting with the family? Of course, Kara said. Front and center. Of course. Still clinging to proximity like it meant something. We made a little small talk, awkward, stilted, mostly for show, until the dinner bell rang. I excused myself and walked to my seat, but I didn't touch the wine. I needed a clear head. Tonight wasn't just about presents. It was recon. Because weddings? Weddings are like intel gold mines. Everyone lets their guard down. And sure enough, over the course of the next few hours, I learned more than I expected. From a tipsy cousin, I found out Jake had been rejected for a business loan 2 weeks ago. His credit too low, his collateral tapped out. From another relative, I overheard that Kara's husband had walked out 3 months ago, and she'd been hiding it, claiming he was working nights. I kept smiling, nodding, soaking it in, because what they didn't realize was that I hadn't come to the wedding to mend bridges. I came to confirm what I already suspected. They were crumbling, and all I had to do was give them a gentle push. The next week, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back to our childhood home, not to visit, not to reminisce, to inspect. See, when Dad passed, Jake had insisted on keeping the house. Claimed he wanted to keep it in the family. Said it would be his kids one day. He doesn't have kids. He promised to pay us each our share, and when he didn't, he talked us into letting him refinance to get things in order. Well, turns out he refinanced twice, missed payments, and now the place was barely holding together. The siding was cracked, the lawn overgrown. A for sale sign stood in the yard, half fallen, like even the sign had given up. I parked across the street and just watched for a while. No one came in. No one went out. The windows were dark. Then I pulled out my phone and called a friend of mine, Mark. He was a real estate agent who owed me a favor from years back when I helped him build his firm's app for free. Remember that project I did for you? I asked. Mark laughed. Still the best client dashboard we've ever had. I'm calling in the favor. Name it. I want to know everything about 1221 Parkwood Lane. He whistled. That's your folks' old place, right? Used to be. Just send me the mortgage details, liens, current listing agent, everything. You got it. Give me a day. While I waited on Mark, I turned to Kara. Well, indirectly. I logged into a private Reddit account I hadn't used in years, found a couple of parenting subreddits, and searched her name. Nothing. Then I searched her husband's name. Jackpot. Buried deep in a venting post from a user whose account had been inactive for months was a confession from a man whose wife's family treated him like a walking wallet. He didn't name Kara, but the details lined up. The 2 kids. The timing of the separation. The reference to her parasite brother. So Jack had left, and she'd been lying about it. With that, I reached out to a private investigator. Not to dig up dirt, per se, just to confirm the timelines. Employment status. Custody filings. Debt trails. Because if I was going to pull the trigger on this, I needed to be sure. Every step, every move, I was building something. Not revenge in the dramatic, movie sense. No loud confrontations. No screaming matches. I was setting a stage, and they wouldn't even realize they were standing on it. When Mark called back, he sounded breathless. You're not going to believe this, he said. Try me. Your brother's listed the house at $90,000 above market value. It's been sitting for months. He's rejected 3 offers. Why? Because, get this, he's trying to flip it. He did some cosmetic updates last year, ran out of money, and now he's banking on a desperate buyer who won't ask too many questions. I rubbed my eyes. And the mortgage? Balloon loan. His second refinance was interest only. Payments just jumped 70%. He's drowning, man. Exactly what I needed to hear. What about the deed? I asked. Mark hesitated. That's the weird part. He never took your names off it. I sat up straight. What? Your name and Kara's? Still on the title. It was never updated after probate. Legally, all 3 of you still co-own the property. That changed everything. Because if my name was still on that deed, Jake couldn't sell a damn thing without my signature. He'd built his last lifeline on a foundation he didn't own. And now, I could pull the rug out from under him. But I wasn't done. I needed leverage on Kara, too. Something that would keep her from swooping in to mediate once Jake started drowning. That's when the PI came through. A tidy little report, 8 pages long. Kara was $37,000 in credit card debt, living paycheck to paycheck. Her husband had filed for full custody and wasn't answering her calls. The apartment she'd just moved into, lease co-signed by their old babysitter because Kara didn't meet the income threshold on her own. I filed all this away because soon they were going to come knocking again. Desperate people always do. So I prepared. I pulled my investments from passive index funds and reallocated some of them into short-term high liquidity accounts, ready to move at a moment's notice. I set up a trust under a shell name. I hired an estate lawyer to quietly begin drafting a motion to partition the property Jake was squatting in. And then, I waited. Just like I knew they would, the storm arrived the next week. Jake called, block number, of course. I let it go to voicemail. Then came Kara. Her message was breathless. Nathan, Jake's in trouble. He could lose the house. He says you've got some legal claim on it. Please don't do this. Just call me. Ah, so now they knew. Good. But I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted them to stew. To feel what it was like to be locked out of your own escape route. To sit in the same silence they'd left me in. Meanwhile, I kept preparing. Lining up calls with realtors. Quietly alerting the bank that I would not be authorizing a sale or refinance. Reviewing every clause in the will to ensure airtight leverage. And then I made one final call. To a podcast host. Not a huge name, but one with a decent following. A show about family finance, inheritance, and the messes people leave behind. The host had once interviewed a friend of mine about estate abuse and financial manipulation. I pitched him a story. No names. No locations. Just a case study of what happens when the black sheep turns out to be the backbone and decides to stop being used. He loved it. We recorded the episode under pseudonyms. It went live a week later. And let's just say, the timing was perfect. Because by then, Jake was knocking at my door. Literally. And he was about to find out just how far I'd gone. But he still hadn't seen the final move. The one that would change everything. And take everything he thought he had left. Jake showed up at my door just before 9 p.m., wearing that same gray hoodie he used to wear back in high school. Back when he still thought he was invincible. He knocked like he didn't care whether I answered. But he lingered like he knew he had no other options. I let him stand there for a few more knocks before I opened the door. His smile was weak. Not smug. Not charming. Just tired. And desperate. "Nate," he said, eyes darting behind me like he expected backup. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside without saying a word and gestured to the couch. He sat, leaned forward, elbows on knees like he had at my place months ago, only this time the air was heavier. He looked smaller somehow, like the years of coasting were finally catching up to him. "Look, I know we've had our differences," he started. I stayed silent. "But things are really bad, man. The house. If I miss one more payment, they're taking it." I nodded like I was listening. I was, but not in the way he hoped. I wasn't there to empathize. He went on, rambling about how the market tanked and contractors overcharged him and the bank moved the goalposts. Every excuse in the book. He never once admitted he'd messed up. "I just need time," he said finally. "That's all. Just don't block the sale, and I'll pay you back after the close. You'll get your third, maybe more." I smiled faintly and walked to my kitchen. Poured 2 glasses of water. Brought one to him. "You still think you're in charge, don't you?" Jake blinked. "What? You think this is a negotiation? That you still hold the cards? But you don't, Jake. You haven't for a while." He stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I reached into a drawer and pulled out a file folder, thick with documents, reports, screenshots. I tossed it onto the coffee table. "That's a full timeline of everything you and Kara tried to do. The fake draft of the will, the mortgage fraud, the Venmo scam, Kara's little stunt with Mom's phone number, even the login attempts on my bank account." He didn't touch the folder. I leaned back, arms crossed. "See, Jake, you thought you were running a hustle. That I'd always bail you out like the smart little brother who'd eventually cave. But I stopped playing that role." His jaw tightened. "What do you want?" I smiled. "There it is." I let the silence stretch before answering. "I want the house," I said. "All of it. You sign your share and Kara's over to me. Clean. No money owed to either of you. I take over the mortgage. I fix it up. I sell it or rent it or burn it to the ground. Doesn't matter. It's mine." Jake looked like I'd slapped him. "No way. Then you default," I said simply, "and lose it anyway. But instead of walking away clean, you get evicted. Your credit tanks. You get sued for damages and owe back taxes you can't pay. And Kara? She gets dragged in too, because her name's still on the deed." Jake's breath hitched. "You'd really do that to your own brother?" "You tried to steal from me," I said coldly. "Twice. You used Mom's death as leverage. You let Kara guilt me while you burned through the inheritance. You tried to rewrite the will, Jake." His eyes flickered. He knew I wasn't bluffing. I leaned forward. "But I'll make it easy. I've already drafted the quitclaim deeds. All you have to do is sign. I'll handle the rest." "And what if Kara doesn't agree?" I smirked. "She already did." That part wasn't technically true, yet. But earlier that day, I'd had my lawyer send her a letter. It included the PI report, her financials, Jack's custody filings, screenshots from forums showing her rants about being abandoned, and a gentle reminder that her name being on a failing mortgage meant she could be personally sued for breach of contract. Along with the letter was an offer. Sign over the house to me in exchange for full release of liability and no public exposure. Her lawyer called back an hour later. She agreed. I slid the signed form across the table to Jake. "Just need yours now." He stared at the paper for a long time. Then at me. "You've changed," he said bitterly. "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending." He signed. Within a week, the house was mine. I didn't throw a party. I didn't brag online. I didn't even tell anyone in the family. Instead, I got to work. Hired a real contractor. Not Jake's buddy, who cut corners and left drywall unfinished. I poured a chunk of my savings into making the place livable again. Fixed the plumbing. Rewired the entire kitchen. Installed solar panels. ripped out the moldy carpet and laid down hardwood that practically glowed in the sunlight. By the time I was done, the house didn't just look better. It felt better, lighter, like it had finally been freed from decades of rot, emotional and physical. And then I sold it. Market was up. Interest rates had leveled. I got 3 offers in the first week, all above asking. When the deal closed, I sat on my balcony that night with a beer in hand and watched the sunset, phone in my lap. Then I sent 2 texts. To Kara, house sold. You're free of the debt. Your kids deserve a better role model than you've been. I hope you figure that out before they start to resent you too. To Jake, you spent your whole life trying to be the favorite. All I wanted was peace. Now I have it. And you? You've got nothing left to steal. Neither of them replied. But the next day, a friend forwarded me a link to an episode of the podcast I'd been on. Apparently, it had gone viral. Comments flooded in. People sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of siblings who felt entitled, of toxic parents, twisted wills, and long overdue boundaries. It was like a collective exhale from people who finally felt seen. Someone even posted, "Whoever Nathan is in this story, thank you. I needed this." I didn't comment. I didn't reply, but I saved that post. Because that's what revenge really is. Not flame and fury. It's walking away from the wreckage with your head held high, while the people who lit the match choke on the smoke. And as for me, I'm done building bridges. Now I build walls. With windows. So I can watch the ones who tried to burn me fall apart from the outside. Final line. I stopped being the family's backup plan and became the blueprint they'll never follow.